Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Junkyard Gamers podcast. This is episode 4, and as always, I'm your host, Sebastian, joined here today by my two friends, Jackson and Kierin. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good.
And swell.
Okay, so basically, in this episode, it's going to be kind of unique. We're going to talk about games that we played in our early childhood and how, we all have nostalgia for those games. And basically, we're just going to take turns listing games, and we're going to go around about 3 times. And we're just going to say various things about it. Alright, so I'll go first, and then we're just going to rotate. So, the first game I wanted to talk about is Pokemon Soul Silver. So, this game was released in 2009 for the Nintendo DS. And this game is really good, for one, because it was a remake of one of the best probably the best Pokemon game of all time, except with remastered graphics and remastered music, making Pokemon Soul Silver arguably also Heart Gold, but making Soul Silver and Heart Gold probably the best Pokemon game of all time. Just because it took a game that was already fantastic and then gave it remastered graphics and remastered music. So what's special about this game is not only do you play through Johto, but you also get to go back and play through Kanto, which is the region that the original game was in. And in the game, you just go through Johto, get all the gym medals, fight in the final 4, and then you basically cross over through a mountain to get to the Kanto region, and then you get all the gym medals for that. And after that, you get to fight the hardest fight and one of the hardest fights in any Pokemon game, which is where you fight against Red, which is presumably the character you play as from Pokemon Red. And he has Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur, Snorlax, and Pikachu, and Lapras. So it's extremely hard, because you can't really just pick a type to counter it. Each one will counter another one. So you might want to use a water type to counter Charizard, but then they have Venusaur, which is a grass type. So basically, he has almost every type and a very strong one of that type, making him hard to counter. And I played it when I was around 7 or 8, and I finished it in about a year. And that might sound bad, but I was a little kid, and it's pretty surprising that I was even able to beat it as a young child, just because a lot of video games are difficult, especially for someone who's 7 or 8. And I just really enjoyed this game, and I loved the soundtrack. The soundtrack was probably one of my top 2 favorite things about the game. Alright, so now it's Kieran's turn.
My game is Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. It was released on the Wii in 2006, and yet I played it when I was 3, 2008. My dad mainly played the game, and I watched, but then he let me play every so often. So I just got to experience it as well. My favorite game mechanics, I'd say, would be swinging the sword like it's an actual sword in your hand. You have a Wii remote that has motion sensor, so if you were to swing your arm right, Link would swing his arm right. In the game, you would go to save Zelda like every other Zelda game. However, there's also other quests, such as going to a Sky City to retrieve an egg for an NPC that needs it, or shoot yourself out of a cannon into the desert. It sounds crazy, but you do that. Honestly, huge impact on my childhood, because it was the first ever Zelda game I've ever seen that looked really cool because I was super young, and it just played like it was like magic to me because
Yeah,
of how good it was.
I remember Twilight Princess being extremely long, but also filled with life and quests and things. There was never a time where you had nothing to do. And I'm pretty sure it's the longest Zelda game. And it has one of the largest maps as well.
Yeah, it was
And
really fun to
yeah.
explore the entire map.
And it was unique. It was the only game that had Zelda game that had a T rating. And also it just had this dark color palette and dark themes The only game that I'd say probably has about as dark of themes as Twilight Princess was maybe Majora's Mask, and even then, it didn't have the dark color palette that Twilight Princess had, and the realistic graphics and this edgy feel to it.
Edgy yet cool.
Yes. And that's even described in the Link that you play as in that game. Like, the Link that you play as is a young adult who always looks like angry and is, when he turns into a wolf, he's hated by the world. And it had a different feel from most other Zelda games, and I enjoyed it as well.
It was actually created because of Wind Waker, which looked extremely cartoony, almost the exact opposite of it. And it was created because people complained that, oh, Wind Waker looks too cartoony and childish. I want something more dark and edgy.
All right, Jackson,
So they
that's your
created
turn.
Twilight Princess.
My first game, it is super mainstream and it is still played today. But the most nostalgic game I can think of is Minecraft. I know it seems so simple, but it's just a game where you could just do whatever you wanted. You could play it almost anywhere on almost any system. It's been around for 10 years. It just recently had its 10-year anniversary. So I just loved how you could either follow the exact story, like get wood, get stone, get iron, get diamonds, fight the Ender Dragon, fight the Wither. I loved that. I love that you had a whole bunch of different opportunities other than the main storyline that I just said. You could build the Mona Lisa, and I don't know. You could build skyscrapers. You could build an entire city. It's just mind-boggling to me how much you could do. It's been around almost my entire life, and it's just anytime I see it and I hear its heartwarming music, I just want to curl up into a ball and play even more. It's just such a fun game. I can't argue that it's not a great game.
It definitely pioneered the creative genre of video games. Like, it set the standard for what you can do in a video game.
Yeah, it was one of the first games that gave you that much freedom for what you can do. And I think it was actually the first game to have an infinite map. It was like the first game to have an infinite map. And
You're cutting out a lot.
it was the first game to have an infinite map where you could just walk on forever and you would never find the end. Like, it literally had the first infinite map. And I just think that's crazy.
And you couldn't find the end until you went through a portal and fought a dragon.
Yeah. Okay, so back around to me. Alright, so my second game is Little Big Planet. And I know the game sounds childish, but the game came out in 2008, and at that time I was 3 years old. But I didn't play it until I was like 6. So yeah. So it was about 2011, and the game came out in 2008, and I was playing it. And this game, on the topic of creative games, this game basically, the whole idea was that you could just do whatever you want. You could play through the story, or you could just create your own levels and have people online play them. And I just really enjoyed it just because of how creative it seemed, and it seemed like it was encouraging its players to be creative. My favorite game mechanics was honestly the level creator, just because it gave you, like, it just showed you that you could make whatever the game makers made, because it gives you all of the assets that they used, and it lets you program things. So it's basically saying, we made this game and we developed this game, but you could do it too. And they kind of strayed away from that in the second and third installment in the series. But my favorite was always the first one, just because it was so like childish and happy and cheery. And I just as a child that was happy and cheery at that time, it was just amazing. And honestly, it's not really memorable. Like, not a lot of people know about it, and nobody really plays it anymore. But at the time, it had a huge player base, and I loved playing it. Honestly, probably I shouldn't have been playing with strangers as a 6-year-old kid. Just because of how toxic the internet and gamers can be. But basically, a summary of what you do is you play through the story and you unlock like skins and assets that you can use to make your own levels, and then you go into the level editor and make levels for the world to play. And it had a huge impact on me because I feel like it was the main thing that kicked off my creative mindset. And it was just getting out there, and it gave you everything you needed in order to make the same levels that the game developers made. And also the soundtrack was amazing. Like a phenomenal soundtrack that I would even listen to today. And I just really liked that game. It came out for the PS3, but the Little Big Planet 3 ended up coming out for the PS4. I honestly didn't like Little Big Planet 3 very much, but Little Big Planet 1 and 2 are probably like some of my most played games. Like if you were to gather all of my total like time played out of every game I've ever played for my entire life, Little Big Planet 1 and 2 it's probably up there.
My favorite game, my second favorite game, would have to be Super Smash Bros. Brawl. It released on the Wii in 2008. I remember playing it with my family a whole lot because I loved just beating them up basically in a video game. It allows you to have fun just destroying your family if you're into that kind of thing. And basically, you would just pick a character and a stage and you just fight with the character. It was also really cool because it took all the characters from all of your favorite Nintendo games and just plotted them against each other. It was simply like you got to decide who battled who and who would win against who. It was very, very cool. Basically, all mode where you get to brawl your friends and family, and then there was a solo mode or a co-op mode, you could say, where you got to play a story mode with cutscenes and such. You got to fight little enemies and kick them off the screen, like with the Nintendo characters' most powerful moves, and you'd basically get to the end and save the world from annihilation. It really was really fun to play and just be a hero while at the same time destroying everything in your path. It was simply my favorite because it was the first Smash Bros. I've ever played. And I think it impacted my childhood by just having fun with my family and friends who've played it with me. Jackson, now it's your turn.
Okay, so my second game, my second most nostalgic game, I would have to say is like just Mario Kart Wii. It, um, so Mario Kart Wii, it was released on the Wii in 2008. It was just so much fun racing and playing like popping bubbles of your friends, and it was just so much fun. You could race against bots, you could race against your family. I have the fondest memories of uh just racing my friends and my brother. Uh he's I remember to this day I still haven't unlocked all of the characters, and my neighbor actually has Diddy Kong. Um, yeah, it was just such a fun and thrilling game. I always got so overwhelmed, not overwhelmed. I always just got so happy when I won, and just like I was happy for my family when they won. Whenever I was playing it, I had the wheels that you put your Wii remote into, so that made it even more immersive, and it was just so much fun using power-ups and getting into first place and getting blue shelled. It was just so much fun.
Okay. So, my third and final game is going to be The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. So, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask was released for the Nintendo 64 slash GameCube in the year 2000, and then remade to 3D for the 3DS in 2015. And I owned both of them, and I've finished both of them all the way through. And Majora's Mask, it's basically like an alternate universe, darker version of one of the best Zelda games of all time, Ocarina of Time. And honestly, that's just amazing because you'd never think that out of a Zelda game unless you're thinking of Twilight Princess. But the most surprising thing is that this game is probably the darkest Zelda game, and it's rated E10 and up. And that's because it doesn't have to be explicit with how dark it is. Like, by explicit, I mean it doesn't have to jump scare you or have blood. All it has to do is just have some dark themes, be creepy, like atmospheric, and just have hints. Like, I remember watching a game theory video about how Link was actually dead because he went through the 5 stages of grief. And I just remember playing through the game again after watching that video, looking for like signs and hints. And I remember just loving every part of that, just because it was just nice to see that there was some, like, they paid attention to what they were doing. They had another like story in mind that wasn't just what you saw in the game. My favorite game mechanics was probably the like side quests. You had to like go find things, and just how overall spooky it was. The combat was almost like a better version of Ocarina of Time because they had time to like master the art of what they did in Ocarina of Time almost. It was way easier to do like the Z-locks and stuff like that just because they made it better. And I just remember replaying this game over and over again as like a 10-year-old. I played through the game on the Nintendo 64. Well, actually, I had the game on a copy of GameCube, and you could play that on your Wii. And I would just plug the GameCube controller into the top of the Wii and just play it. And I replayed through this game and beat it 4 times as a 10-year-old. And each time I just remember always forgetting what to do, even though I've done it 3 times before. And then on that last playthrough, I just knew everything by heart. So I was basically just running around already knowing what to do. And just doing all the side quests. And the last time I played through, it was just a completionist playthrough. Finding all the masks. Actually, that's my favorite game mechanic, all the masks. It was just so, like, each of them had a different power. And some of them were just completely useless, but you had to get them because you wanted to complete the game. And then as an older child, in 2015, I played it on the 3DS, and the graphics were just so much better, and it was very good because I could take it on the go. I could just go in the car and be fighting bokoblins, whatever. Bokoblins weren't in that game, but you know what I mean. Just, it was such a good game, and honestly, all 3 of these games I've listed are all like tied for number 1 in my heart because they were all part of my childhood, and I enjoyed every single one of them. And it just had a huge impact on me. I just remember being, like, creeped out by the Happy Mask salesman all the time, and to an unreasonable amount, just because I thought about what he'd do to me. And I just see, like, his creepy smile. And I remember just watching the creepypastas of, like, Ben Drowned and stuff like that, and getting way too spooked over stuff like that. And, yeah, it's just very nostalgic, and I still listen to the soundtrack to this day. If you notice a common theme here, all 3 of these games, I love the soundtrack and I love the game. I know you guys have probably played Majora's Mask before.
Yeah, I played it once, but I didn't complete it because I didn't necessarily own it. I just used like a ROM.
Yeah, Majora's Mask is definitely my top 3 favorite Zelda games.
I sadly have not completed Majora's Mask. I've never played it. I've seen playthroughs and playthroughs, but I've just never gotten enough money or time to actually play it. It's really sad, honestly.
Kierin, now it's your turn.
My third game is New Super Mario Bros. For the Wii. It was my first ever Nintendo game that I've ever played. Despite about Nintendo prior to it, I just never really actually got to play it. So when I finally got to play it on my Wii, I was just like super excited. It was my first ever Mario game as well, so it's gonna be like, ooh, you got a new Nintendo console, and now you got the first ever Nintendo character on your console. It's sort of based on the Wii, and it was released in hold up, it was released in 2006. Um, I think my favorite game mechanic for it would have to be all the power ups. Even even okay, that just messed me up. Okay, I'm just gonna restart one more time. Okay, my third favorite game would have to be New Super Mario Bros. Wii. It was my first ever Nintendo game on my Wii, which I had just gotten with the game as well. So it was released in 2006, and my favorite game mechanics were all the power ups that you could do. You could have one where it's a propeller hat, which made you fly in the sky and basically stomp on all the enemies in the level. There was one where you could be a penguin, literally a penguin sliding on ice and just like running into enemies and killing them. There was also one where you could where it was like the classic fire flower, where you could throw fireballs at people in the level. It was pretty cool. I basically save Princess Peach yet again, like for the millionth time. But it was just like really nostalgic for me because it was the first Mario game I've ever played. So it was like very special to me when I finally saved the princess for the first time ever, instead of having to be um, someone else do it. It was really interesting for me because I felt like I was the hero who did it, and it really was the first ever video game I've played that was on an actual console. So it was really special to me. All right, Jackson, your turn.
Yeah. So my third game is another mainstream one that I'm sure a lot of you have either played or at least seen. It's Ocarina of Time. I love this game. It's it's third on my game because it's third on my list because it's just I it's third on this list because it invoked emotions in me, but it didn't invoke like as many emotions. Like it invoked a lot, but not as much. It uh it was originally released in 1998 for the game, not the GameCube, the Nintendo 64. Then in 2011, it was released on the 3DS. I played the 3DS version and loved it. Loved the entire thing. Um, it was just an incredible thing.
Fun fact: Ocarina of Time 3D was actually the first game to be released for the 3DS.
Huh.
Like the first game to be released for the 3DS and not the DS was
That's cool.
Ocarina of Time 3D.
That's cool. So carrying on with what I was saying, Ocarina of Time, it was just, I loved it every second. It, my favorite game mechanic was probably the Gerudo town where you had to just sneak around and you couldn't just go willy-nilly killing everything. You had to actually sneak around, and that was the first part that actually stumped me, and I had to look up a walkthrough. I know I'm pathetic. But that was I loved that portion. It was just great. Um it oh god. In the game, you have to at first you're young Link, and you actually have to get a sword and a shield before you can reach the first dungeon. Whenever you get the first dungeon and you complete that, there's 2 more that you have to complete before you can just age. After you grow up 7 years older, and now you have the Master Sword, you have to complete, I want to say, 6 more dungeons. Yeah, 6 more dungeons. And I I completed all 6 dungeons like in no time, in a matter of a few days. And it was really mainly just uh the crap. It was really mainly just the Ganon fight that confused me. I couldn't figure out for the life of me how to
You have to deflect his attacks.
no, not Ganondorf, Ganon.
Oh, Ganon. Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like jump attacks and then evading.
Right.
And
I couldn't
it's very helpful if you get like the Giant's Knife or the Goron's Blade.
Yeah.
Because that one does a lot more damage than the Master Sword.
Yeah, well, I just couldn't figure out for the life of me how to defeat Ganon. It was just I couldn't figure it out, and then
He was an
eventually I was
absolute
like,
beast.
eventually I figured out, hey, I can roll under his legs and then hit him with like bombs or something. It was just a moment of awe, like, wow, I actually figured it out on my own. And it was just so heartwarming for me. It made me feel so good. So, and that's about it for me.
I think we've just about wrapped up. So, yeah, all these games we all view in our hearts just because of the nostalgia it provides us and how fun it was. Because a lot of these were like our first video games that we played as a child, and they probably shaped us as gamers today. So,
Rise up, gamers.
next episode is either going to be, it's going to be something ranking based. We could either rank the Zelda games as a group, or the My Hero Academia openings, or the JoJo openings. And then another set of episodes we're going to do is just going to be like show reviews, like what we think of shows so far, such as The Mandalorian and My Hero Academia Season 4. And yeah, so all that content is coming at you as soon as possible. And we all 3 of us are freshmen in high school, so we have very busy schedules. So we're just going to try our best to pump out as much content as possible while remaining quality.
Remaining extra cool.
Yes.
Extra quality.
Steen mic quality.
Wow.
Steen videos.
That's the end of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like the video and subscribe. And ring the bell for notifications the next time we upload, which could honestly be in like 5 years. So, bye-bye.